Hi, folks, and welcome to another Rio and Raw conversation. So together with Marco, I'm joined by Erez Modai. He's not here with us, but he'll be with us very, very soon, maybe in a matter of seconds. And he's key for the upcoming conversation because we're going to be talking about the judicial system with a particular focus in Israel. And he's an international business lawyer based in Tel Aviv. So for sure, he has the right insights for you guys. It's quite a complex topic. I'm a bit confused myself, but I'm quite sure that at the end of the discussion, we'll get to know about this monster called the judicial system. Like, from my understanding, the judicial system should be all about fairness and standing for the truth. But maybe it's not as simple as it is. And Erez will let us know whether we can make this statement with accuracy or should be careful when giving compliments to the judicial system. So I'm going to pass the ball to Marco, and before, I just want to encourage everyone to press those three buttons below. If you can subscribe our channel, that's a great help. If you know someone who's into these topics and are not aware, it would be great if you can share with those guys. And if you enjoy what you do here, we'll be very thankful if you can provide us with a thumbs up. So over to you, Marco, for a more broad understanding of the discussion.
Thank you, Vito. So, at the heart of this debate lies a fundamental question about the balance of power between Israel's branches of government, specifically the role and authority of the judiciary in shaping the nation's laws and upholding democratic principles. Supporters of reform argue that changes are necessary to restore democratic accountability and curb judicial overreach, while opponents warn that such reforms risk undermining judicial independence and eroding the rule of law. This debate is not just about legal mechanisms, it's about the future character of Israeli democracy. And it's something that's been in the news for the past few years. It's gone slightly on the back burner since the beginning of the war, but not totally. Okay, so I'd like to start now and ask Erez Modai, our international business lawyer and expert, to speak a little bit about judicial reform and start from the beginning, Erez, because this is something that goes back a few decades. So can you just run us through the process?
Absolutely. First, I need to make some preliminary comments. The first one is that I'm not a constitutional law lawyer, I should say, but I am very much interested and concerned about the issues at hand. The second point is, I think, a good place to start this evening. In the last few days, a recording of the chief Supreme Court, the president of the Supreme Court, as is called in Israel, his recording surfaced. He was addressing high school kids, and he said the following, and I hope I'm not misquoting. He basically said, there are no rules to the game. We decide, we, meaning the judicial system and the Supreme Court, we decide which law is good and which law isn't good. And these are the rules of the game. So he said that there are no rules of the game and that these are the rules of the game. So I think this, he was also quoted to have said that the democracy in the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, is, I think it could be translated well to a nominal democracy. It isn't the real democracy that is based on values and things like that. Although in his own court, decisions are taken by majority, which are a reflection of nominal democracy. I thought this story and these quotes are a good place to start.
Yes.
Israel is a nation of millennia, but as a state, it is pretty young. It's from the late 40s, 1948 to be exact, and until the mid 70s, it basically derived all its judicial and legal structures from Britain that had a mandate over the land of Israel in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So in the late 50s, they decided that as Israel has no constitution, they, meaning the parliament, will enact it chapter by chapter. And each chapter they called a basic law. There was a basic law about the parliament itself and elections and things like that. And things were at a point that the Supreme Court rarely decided to cancel a law enacted by the parliament, because the parliament was perceived as the representative of the sovereign people of the state of Israel, the citizens, Arab, Jewish, and a few other groups, each having one vote per person. Back in 1992, there was the enactment of a basic law called the Marco, maybe you know better the term, the honor of man and his freedom. Am I right?
Yes, I get what you're saying. Yes, human dignity and freedom. I think
human dignity and freedom. So this was one of the chapters. It was enacted by a very small majority. Only a small part of the Israeli members of Knesset participated in the enactment process, and it was basically to introduce to the judicial system the powers and authority to take into account values of the Israeli statement of independence, and to make it part of the law, because the concern then was that the executive branch would take liberties and has to be restrained by the judicial branch. And sorry, I said executive branch, I meant the legislative branch, and it had to be checked and balanced, so to speak, by the judicial branch. And people were very happy, and I should say proud. I was a law student then, very proud of this mechanism that theoretically ensured us that there would be no dictatorship in Israel, because even if the legislative branch goes crazy, quote unquote, the judicial branch will be there to put the limits. And this was to many ears very good news. Now, what happened in subsequent years is that the judicial system, I don't want to say bastardized, but used this basic law as a leverage point to elevate itself above the law of Israel, meaning that everything can be considered. Everything has to be in a balance of different values, and it is the judicial system and mainly the Supreme Court that decide what has more importance at certain circumstances, and that could be more powerful or has more authority than the enactment authority of the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, and basically puts the judges and the supreme judges over above the law and stronger, so to speak, than the parliament, which is the representative of the people of Israel. So this is the problem in a nutshell. Mind you that the judges are not elected like in certain countries in the world, the US to name one. They are not elected by the people, and they are completely free of reporting to the people. They are like what we call nails with no heads. Once
They're a law. I see, a law unto themselves, a self-perpetuating judiciary, essentially.
Right. Right. Theoretically, that would have been balanced by introducing people of varied background as supreme judges. That wasn't the case, in fact, because the left wing of Israel, through the Israel Lawyer Bar, through the state prosecution, and through the legal councils of the government, basically tilted the interpretation of law drastically in one way. And since they controlled the procedure of nominating supreme judges, they basically ensured that their opinions and I should say outlooks will prevail over any other, though they in no way, or I should say very little, represent the people of Israel, as well as the law enacted by the parliament. So this became evident throughout the years when we got something we discussed before, which is selective application of the law.
Yes.
And one topic I should bring up is that back in the disengagement, there was a very prominent judge who decided to incarcerate teenage girls ages 12 to 14 until the completion of the procedures against them, because they wanted to protest against the disengagement back in 2005.
Yes.
The reasoning was that protest is very important, but it should not interfere with public life in the sense that, and this is the best example, roads should not be blocked. Transportation should not be interfered with.
Indeed.
18 or 19 years go by, and I don't want to say suddenly, but the people blocking the throughways in Israel are the people from the ideological camp of the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And suddenly, the right of process is more important than the right of the people of Israel to decent transportation. So, and this is an act of law. It's not something that that should be open to interpretation.
Yes, but they obviously interpret it to suit their political outlook. This seems
Absolutely
to be abundantly clear. I think there is an analogy with what's happening in Great Britain at the moment with a two-tier system applying to people with different political and moral orientations. I think we can safely say that due to this type of judiciary that we have a two-tier system in Israel. Would I be correct in saying that?
In a sense, I wish it were. It's not a two-tier. It's the very same courts that apply the law differently.
Well, that's what I mean by two-tier.
Same thing. Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's
yes,
what I mean by two-tier, in the
yes,
sense that the law is applied differently depending on your background and your
right.
political or orientation. Indeed. Now, what are the arguments? I mean, what are the arguments that people make against judicial reform? I mean, this is strikes me as something particularly strange, as if it were the end of democracy, that even hypothetical reform itself in a democracy can indeed be reformed itself. It's a constant movement. Let's say a democracy has these debates, and the pendulum does swing to and fro in a democracy to a great extent. But here we seem to have a gridlock, as if it's petrified. The system simply cannot change. It's not subject to changes in society, to the sensibilities in society. It's a very peculiar situation.
Well, in a sense, we are true to our ancestors' lookout on laws in general. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments, the Israelites, in the second time, said, we will abide by the commandments, and we will hear them. We will listen to them.
Yeah.
Now, some say, how can you abide by them before you hear them? Which is an interesting question. 3 or 4 millennia later, Israelis, and especially the judicial system, they want to decide how and if the law should be interpreted. And in my view, the problem is that a vast majority, not a vast majority, but a vast percentage of Israelis believe that this one-sided interpretation is, quote unquote, the law. So if you say, wait a minute, how come this disparity or this the discrepancy between 14-year-old girls back in 2005 and people who are disrupting life in Israel? So the other people say, what do you mean? That's the law. Yes. They don't want to notice the selective application of the law.
Discrepancy between the way it was applied in 2005 and 2022-23 onwards. Indeed, you're absolutely right, which is quite extraordinary when one thinks about the sheer violence of the protesters as well, because there is no comparison with what happened in 2005. You had a bit of obstruction, yes, but you had essentially peaceful demonstrations. Here you have people lighting tires and causing havoc and engaging in acts of violence.
Mind you, the legal counsel to the government was then Meni Mazuz, formerly a Supreme Court judge.
Yes.
He said if the protesters against the disengagement set 1 foot on the road and disrupt transportation, they will be incarcerated and indicted.
Indeed.
Now, the funny thing that the same person is Honorable Justice Meni Mazuz was asked how can he justify I'll say not prosecuting the protesters who block the whole traffic in Tel Aviv. And his response, he's not a justice anymore, he retired, but he said, I didn't know they were blocking roads. Okay, so, yeah. And other people, such as the head of the opposition in the parliament, Yair Lapid, said, these are totally different people, meaning that they should not be subject to the same law. In the name of democracy, in the name of equality, in the name of the rule of law. These people can protest because they are above the law, because they are different people. They are excellent people. Excellent. And I'm not saying that cynically.
No, I'm fully aware of
genuinely concerned about Israeli democracy. What they don't understand is that law is not an exact science. It can be interpreted, and the current judicial system or leaders of the judicial system, especially the Supreme Court, enforce a very narrow, very one-sided interpretation of the law. And there are many, many examples to that. One that we've mentioned before is that we have a serious problem with the illegal immigrants. And the government of Israel, actually different governments of Israel, came up with 3 plans to do what Trump is doing these days, sending them back to their countries or other countries abroad. And the Supreme Court decided that it will, I don't want to say rule out, but that those plans will not be implemented, although the latest one was much more, let's say, liberal and generous to the illegal immigrants than any other in the world.
Right.
So there, and as I mentioned before, the Supreme Court, Supreme Justice Aaron Barak, who was Professor Aaron Barak, I should say, who was behind the use of the basic law to basically say anything I think is the law, or my values are better than yours. He rejected the nomination of another professor. He said she her agenda is not in line with the agenda of the Supreme Court.
Indeed, you're referring to Ruth Gavison. Ruth Gavison.
Right, exactly. Now, what made my ears ring is that the Supreme Court should have an agenda. How can a court have an agenda if it should, discuss each case that comes before it? If it has an agenda, then what exactly is your role here?
Indeed. It's prevaricating, according to what you say. That would be your position, indeed. Vitor, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so I'll be very keen to understand what's the generic view of the judicial system in Israel. Let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, like how popular it is for the everyday person, the judicial system in Israel in the current times.
Well, the judicial agenda through under the guise of the law, as I said before, is many times implemented by the legal counsel to the government. And on October 7th, 1923, when Israel was under attack by thousands of sadistic terrorists and murderous terrorists, the legal counsel said that Israel cannot declare war. She actually delayed the declaration of war, which has numerous implications, such as drafting the reserve army and other things, that if a war is not declared, then they become either impossible or very complicated, because they have to be approved in a different way, as if people are not being raped and tortured and murdered. So this is not theoretical. This is as practical as can be. I'm not saying that people died because of that decision. Okay, I don't know that, so I won't say it. But the fact is, it touches every Israeli, whether that Israeli is supportive of the reform or is concerned about the dictatorship. All our lives are affected by those decisions, and more so of politicians, because if you look back since the mid-90s, the public prosecution has been very active against politicians from the right side of the political map. Sometimes things like we're giving the impression of having been blown up from something minute to something that looks and sounds terrible. And in other cases, such as the case of Gal Hirsch, who was supposed to be appointed to chief of police in Israel, they dragged him, if I remember correctly, 5 years in all kinds of procedures and courts. Nothing came out of it. And this could be said to 14 years of investigations on Member of Parliament Lieberman, who, as far as I remember, was never indicted, let alone found guilty in anything.
And I suppose we could also speak about the current proceedings against Prime Minister Netanyahu. There seems to be something there too, a tendency for vexatious lawsuits.
Let's talk about what is called case number 3000.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the proceedings, the judges called the representative of the prosecution and said, there is nothing in the case that could constitute a violation or a breach of law. Immediately, those judges were labeled traitors. So the system enforces the agenda of the of the judicial of itself, of the Supreme Court, both outward and inward.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Can I draw your attention to another episode? Because something of great significance happened in mid-war, when, let's say, the judicial reform and the process and the protests against judicial reform should have been put to one side during wartime, which I think most people on the judicial reform side were prepared to do, to put it on the back burner for the duration of the war. And midway through the war, we had a decision handed down by the president of the Supreme Court, Miss Esther Hayut, striking down the reasonableness clause mid-war, which I think is very telling with regard to the attitude. It also provides us a key with which to interpret the workings of the Supreme Court. What's your opinion on that?
The reasonableness sounds as the perfect tool for every circumstances.
Indeed, indeed. I fully understand that. Go ahead, please explain that, and then I want to say something else. Yeah.
Theoretically, the judge should not affect his or her own opinions, but think of a theoretical, reasonable person. How would such a person would decide on the matter at hand? The problem is that you cannot split a person in two. So eventually, what that judge or another rules is what seems reasonable to him or her.
In their eyes.
Is right. So it does reflect their opinion. It
Indeed.
Does reflect their emotions and political views and things that should in no way be brought into account when making judiciary decisions.
Indeed,
and
indeed.
Reasonableness became the code for this is what I want. This is what I think is right. This is what I want.
That's right. And for putting a spanner in the works, as we say in English, for putting a spanner in the works. Indeed. And the opinions, there are two things I wanted to take you up on. The opinions of the judges, I think there is a general awareness that they do not resonate with the sensibilities and morality of the public at large. I think we can say that with some certainty that a very vast sector in Israel does not identify with the values of the Supreme Court. I think we can say that with a certain amount of say, certainty, put it that way. I apologize for the assonance. There is another thing I wanted to say, but the mere fact that she handed down a decision on such a controversial subject mid-war, I find that rather telling. They could have avoided handing down a decision during the course of the war.
If I'm not mistaken, she I don't want to say overstayed, but she made sure she would be presiding over this issue, or over the discussion on this issue. Although I think she was supposed to leave earlier or something like that.
Right,
Um,
right.
and
But she
and this
wasn't.
is telling.
Yes, indeed, and it wasn't in the. I mean, whichever side you take here, it certainly wasn't in the public interest to rule on something which is potentially very divisive during the course of a war. A war requires unity. I think so. And this is very telling, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It demonstrates, in my opinion, the value scale of the people who sit in the Supreme Court, because in the value which I regard the highest, personally, is Zionism, meaning the right of the Jewish people to exist and lead a sovereign life in the land of Israel. Now, if you decide mid-war that you need to push back on judicial issues, it means that there are more important issues. There are higher values. And I can give you another example. As I said, the dignity of man and freedom, basic law, referred to the Declaration of Independence. The spirit of Declaration of Independence of Israel. The Declaration of Independence talks a lot about the state of Israel being the home of the Jewish people. The word democracy is not mentioned once in the Declaration of Independence, not because the people of Israel didn't want democracy, because things were different after the Holocaust and during war for life or death of the Jews of the land of Israel. So this is the background to the Declaration of Independence. For some reason, the Supreme Court insists on acting as if the legacy of the Declaration of Independence is not so much Jewish or not Jewish at all, but more of progressive values such as democracy and I dare say inclusion and things like that, that completely disregard the feelings and the aspirations and the interests of the vast Jewish majority in Israel.
Yes.
This is how the tendencies and different values of the Supreme Court find their way to the public life in Israel, despite the fact that the vast majority of Israelis and indeed of Israeli citizens support the fact that this would be one speck of land where Jews will, I don't want to say call the shots, but lead life.
Yes, the rhythms, yes, I think we can say the rhythms of the country and the narrative and the holidays are recognizably Jewish, and the sensibilities of the judiciary should fit into that view.
And instead, the judiciary, whether I like it or not, sometimes I like it, but whether I like it or not, chips away at those values.
Yes.
For example, there was a law in Israel that no businesses will be open in the weekends during the Sabbath.
Yeah.
This was is basically ignored in many places in Israel. Now, as someone who doesn't observe the Jewish religion to its in 100%, let's call it. I like going to movies in weekends, but the fact is that it's illegal.
That's right.
That's a fact.
And it
Now
isn't applied. Yeah, and it isn't. And it
isn't applied.
Yeah, so we're talking once more about selective application of the law,
Right.
which
Exactly.
is in legal terms something that's very serious. It sort of it amounts to a perversion of the course of justice, if you will, to a certain extent.
Right. I want to raise a different issue. There was the issue of humanitarian aid to Gaza. Israel was under a lot of pressure from the United States to allow humanitarian aid, which basically was a way for Hamas to funnel money and resources and to keep its iron grip over the citizens of Gaza. Now, the judicial system, through the legal counsel of the government, basically adopted the American position and said it's illegal not to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. Although, if you look back and if you look sideways, about 0% of armies in war have the responsibility of feeding their
enemy
enemies.
population. Absolutely. So they seem to be making up law as they go along, with other authoritative opinions in international law think otherwise. That Israel is under no obligation to supply an enemy power with humanitarian aid.
Right, especially in the conditions where such aid is immediately transformed into guns, into drafting of Gazan people under coercion to the forces of Hamas, which translates immediately to lives of soldiers, Israeli soldiers.
Indeed, it has effectively tied the hands of the Israeli army as well. Truth be told, yes, right. And it does. And here I'd like to sort of, maybe I'm going off slightly on a tangent, because it is indicative of an attitude also which affects the code of ethics which has been imposed upon the Israeli army by a certain gentleman by the name of Asa Kasher and his purity of arms.
Right.
There is. Right. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, I'm not an expert on military law, but in general, I can say that we Jews have the tendency to take more obligations than we have to, and to be more strict with ourselves than we are with others. And in that sense, we feel obligated to prove to the world that we are more righteous than the Pope, as they say in some languages.
Yes, more Catholic than the Pope.
More Catholic than the Pope, right. So we have to prove that other armies just bomb away, carpet bomb Iraq. If you're the coalition of 1991. In Israel, we announce that we are going to bomb a certain area or house, because it is not fair to kill someone who wants to kill you.
Yes,
because you're stronger.
It's not cricket.
It's not politically correct.
Right.
Not, but only when it has to do with Israelis.
Yes.
I mean, no one asks exactly how the Alawites in Syria are executed by the Sunni regime.
Indeed.
They're not as refined in their criticism when non-Jews are the perpetrators.
Yes, and they're not as sensitive in these situations. Yes, they're not too concerned about placing our soldiers' lives at risk. What is important, what is uppermost in their mind, is giving a good impression to the world.
Right, and if I may say, if I may mention another issue of October 7th, when the judicial or the legal advisor to the military said that the Air Force couldn't bomb or couldn't attack the multitudes of Arabs coming from Gaza to rape, torture, kill, and pillage and burn cattle and what have you, for legalistic reasons.
Yes, yeah.
I don't want to say
Legalistic
that.
reasons which don't really have a huge legal basis, and certainly not an understanding of law as something that articulates moral constructs. These are things that exist in their minds more than in any real understanding of law as an expression of something moral, and that. Go ahead.
Or
Sorry.
at least applied in the most extreme and unreasonable manners.
Yeah.
To the extent that many casualties could have been prevented if the Air Force would have attacked the points of entry and from Gaza to Israel.
Yeah.
And instead of fearing for our own citizens being attacked, murdered, and abducted to Gaza, it gives the impression that we were trying to be more Catholic than the Pope, in the sense that we didn't want to harm any bystanders who are uninvolved, quote unquote.
Yes, we know about that non-involvement. Vitor?
Yeah, I'm just very curious here. Like, when it comes to the so-called upper hand, who has it in Israel? Is it the military or the judicial system?
Okay, that's a difficult question. First of all, the judiciary system, meaning the courts and the legal counsel system and the public prosecution, to an extent also the Israel lawyer bar, have the upper hand because they create the impression that, as I said before, the application of the law by those people who tend to be on the left wing is, as I said, the law. They don't say that, okay, this is one way to interpret the law, and maybe in other circumstances it could be. No, they make false representation that this is the rule of law, which it isn't. Now, as with regard to the military, we need to understand two things. The first one is that the military abides by the law as is, let's say, conveyed to it by the judiciary system. The second thing is that what happened in the judiciary system seems to have happened in the military and security community in Israel at large, meaning that left-leaning people have been promoted, have been given authority, have been given, are calling the shots and making the decisions, while others who may be not less talented, not less devoted, but have the wrong opinion are suppressed. And I'm saying this. I asked a friend, how come the politicians who come from the security system, Ami Ayalon, Yair Golan, and many other names who are extreme leftists, how come only they come out of the security service, from the Mossad, from the IDF, from the IAF, from the Israeli Air Force? How come none of them are leaning to the right? Why? Is there only one correct solution to every problem? And the answer I got was that these systems were politicized, in the sense that people with the wrong opinions do not get promoted. There's a very thick glass ceiling that these people, like Professor Gabizon, when she was supposed to be nominated to the Supreme Court, are labeled as having the wrong agenda, which is terrible, because the military and the security system should have only one agenda, and that's protecting the citizens of Israel. Not political, not progressive, not anything else, which they failed miserably in October 7th, by the way, but that's a different topic.
Yes, it may be a different topic, but it is certainly pertinent to mention it here, because it has these attitudes have infected Israeli institutions across the board.
Right, including the influence of academia, including progressive American funds that give scholarships to high-ranking IDF officers and other civil servants, which is, apart from being a sort of bribe in the way I see it, is further contributing to the tilting of the system to the left. To the left, the more progressive, less Jewish, less nationalistic, whatever all the claims that you hear in Europe against the European Union establishment exist in Israel.
Yes, they can be applied here in the same measure. Yeah. And indeed, we see, as Vitor knows, we see analogous situations in Europe as well, where the judiciary, to a great extent, is in the hands of people with certain outlooks. Can you confirm that, Vitor, in Portugal, where you're from, and in Ireland, where you reside?
Yeah, fortunately, I can confirm that. I would like to provide people with different news, but it's hard to believe that the judicial system is one of the most corrupted institutions in Europe. So, and I think it's not getting any better. Probably something that is going on the wrong direction for the last 10 years, if not more. But I believe that the fact that we do things like that and social media and the alternative channels, we can call out what's happening, and perhaps we can make a change in the next generation or two. And I think in Israel the same is happening. I think there are voices that are being heard, and maybe they can echo in the right way. Is it something that you can hope for, guys? Erez, Marco?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Erez that question. How do you think, Erez, how do you believe the situation can be remedied? Because it can be remedied. It's
well, it seems like the progressive, I don't want to say population, but the progressives are clinging to the centers of power, in the sense that they, I don't want to say control, because it has this anti-Semitic
Ring to
odor.
it, you say.
Yeah, ring, exactly. But they are very dominant in the academia, in the mainstream press and TV, in the judicial system, of course, in other systems as well. And as I said, the military and security systems of Israel are not immune to this trend. So I am concerned, but I think that backlash is growing. I think that more and more people understand. Friends of mine that come with these phrases like democracy is in danger, and sometimes all it takes is asking, why do you think so?
Yes.
Sometimes it takes more. Sometimes I get into very heated discussions, but eventually, and I believe most of the people are honest, they will come to the conclusion. I don't want to say that they have been deceived, because no one likes to admit that they've been deceived, but that there is room for change. I talked with someone who was very much anti-Netanyahu, even before the judicial reform. And I talked to him about all these problems in the judicial system. And what he said to me was very much telling. He said, yes, we should correct that, but not that way. He didn't have any proposals. How should we correct things? He knew, or actually felt, that the way that the government is doing it since 2022, I think, is the wrong way. But he has absolutely no suggestions, although he absolutely acknowledges that the system is crooked and needs serious reform.
And it's not fit for purpose in the light of reality here. It's not something that can it's not something that can sustain the state. The architecture isn't working. Put it this way: the architecture of the state isn't working. And I think it needs to be recognized that it's the judicial the situation with the judiciary is also a reflection of the outlook of certain politicians to sort of, as you said before, water down the notion of a Jewish state. And I believe it's also connected to the so-called the fictitious peace process, which has been going on for many years, or which had been going on for many years. And there was a sort of an oblique understanding with our so-called peace partners, and also with a certain element within the internal constituency. There was a sort of a tacit understanding to push a certain agenda along, water down Jewish identity, and facilitate the creation of an enemy state in the land of Israel, with all the economic interests of certain parties as well. I think there are a number of interlocking elements here that are now unraveling.
Let me tell you about one such interlocking element. One of the most active NGOs in Israel against the judicial reform is something called it's a not-for-profit establishment called Blue and White Future. Now, this it was the funnel of huge sums of money that went into manipulation of public opinion against the reform, or I should say, in the guise of being against the reform, it was actually against the government.
Yes.
Because people oppose the rule of the Likud party, and especially Prime Minister Netanyahu. Now, I can understand where that's coming from. Mind you, I'm not saying that I personally am a supporter or opposition of the government. I say that I can understand where that's coming from. But Blue and White Future was established, I think, something like 15 years ago, with the sole purpose of promoting the two-state solution. Nothing about democracy, nothing about the rule of law, nothing about the status of the Supreme Court. These are all excuses. These are all ways to mobilize the uneducated people. Mind you, I'm not saying not intelligent. They can be doctors and engineers, but in the sense that they can be enrolled to the fight against turning Israel into a vicious dictatorship. They are uninformed and sometimes fooled people, and that was the main agenda. The two-state solution was the main agenda of Blue and White Future for a much longer time than they talked about democracy and the rule of law in Israel and all that. I don't want to say mumbo jumbo because it's very clever. It's devised.
There is method.
Yes.
To the
Yes.
neighbor.
There's a reason why so many people are buying into this, this comparison between Netanyahu and Erdogan, the president of Turkey, who, by the way, imprisoned something like 23,000 judges. They see him as exactly the same.
Right.
They see Netanyahu as exactly the same as other tyrants. They think he should be executed and that he's a traitor, etc., etc. And again, I'm not saying that I'm a supporter or in opposition to the current government. What I am saying is that someone has lost touch with reality.
Yeah.
No concentration. A friend of mine who happens to be a lesbian said that if the government, if the Likud and Netanyahu stay in power, she will have to put 6 different stars of David, yellow stars of David, like the Jews had to put in the Holocaust in the 40s, because she's a woman, because she's a lesbian, because she is non-religious, and she found 3 others, as if the SS is going to knock on her door and take her to a concentration or another camp or for forced labor, or someone is going to take away her voting right. These were never discussed. It's all figments of the imagination, the very creative and smart imagination of people who basically want the two-state solution and feel this is the right way for Israel, even if Israel will cease to be a Jewish state.
Yes. So the type of person you mentioned certainly is an indicator of some kind of mental derangement. I have to be perfectly frank.
Actually, she's a very dear friend.
Yes, I fully understand that. One can feel a sense of affection for somebody, but to reason in such a way, I believe there is, at a certain point, it becomes a mental health issue, and I think we see this on a grand scale.
I beg to differ, because if you say this is a mental disorder, and you think back how Hitler was able to mobilize Germany, if you say this is a mental disorder, you're basically saying the Germans are not responsible for what they did, because they were deranged. They had a mental disorder. What I'm saying is that.
Let me just interject here for
sure.
1 second, because I think a mental disorder can be consciously induced, and that is where I beg to differ with you.
Okay,
I believe one can take.
I understand.
One can a person. I think we see people who are even educated and intelligent, with many of the people who caused the Holocaust, who were the main actors behind the Holocaust, were people who of a high level of education. I think at a certain point, a person can, when there is, and this I believe this firmly, when there is a moral collapse, and when a person becomes incapable of some way of adhering to a moral framework, I think this induces some kind of derangement. And I believe the opposite is also the case. When somebody is mentally deranged, they can't handle a moral framework. It's a complex issue, but it's a little bit provocative, but I see certain people who cannot handle facts, who do not let facts get in the way. Now, it doesn't mean that they're always like that. Okay, they can go in and out of that. Okay?
I regard it as being willingly brainwashed. That's why I said before that these people are basically depositing their mental capacities with the spin doctors and marketing people that try to market the imminent collapse of Israeli democracy as a tool to overthrow the democratically elected government. These are people who are inclined or tend to see the rule of the right as something that's inherently wrong, and therefore they are more susceptible to buying the harebrained theories, conspiracy theories, I should say, that the Israel is will become a dictatorship like Cuba and like other places. Although nobody is contemplating that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's certainly. I mean, you and I, we agree on that. Our diagnosis is slightly different.
Right. But the bottom line is the same.
Yeah. I have a question for you after watching some news today. So I'm sure you are familiar with the Eurovision. I don't know how much you watch it or not, but we are all happy when Israel does well. And
are they?
I saw some of the movements around the venue in Switzerland, and there were plenty of flags, those Palestinian flags. There are more Palestinian flags than there are of the participants, which is fantastic, no?
Sure.
But I would be interested, setting those things aside. I know Israel won the Eurovision 3 times. I should check on ChatGPT because I'm not a big Eurovision fan. Just for the record.
You mean you don't enjoy the music on the?
No, I'd rather go to old-fashioned Woodstock festival then with rock.
Perfect.
Yeah, Woodstock.
Perfect.
I'm a Woodstock person. But so Israel won 3 times, and when they win, to my best knowledge, then they need to organize it the day after, and those events take place on Saturday. So during Shabbat, at least the festival itself, but there are rehearsals and preparations that take place during Shabbat. So how is the country dealing with that, say, from a law point of view?
Well, I think the Eurovision is not regarded as a state effort, although it's of course it reflects on the country, on the state of Israel, but it's not actually executed by the government. So the government may support, and but it's
Sorry, I don't want to contradict you, but it's not the national TV that organize the Eurovision, because in Europe it is. That's why I thought there will be a relation between the two. I
okay.
don't want to call you out, but I thought so.
No, you're right. You're completely right. But the national television, which is also center of power leaning to the left,
Yeah.
and therefore is not actually too worried about breaching the Jewish laws, but eventually it's not regarded as like the Ministry of Education that organizes a certain event. It's not regarded as such a formal act of government in that sense, and ultra religious people won't watch it anyway. Some of them don't even have TV, so it's not that of a big deal. But what you mentioned brought to mind all the pro-Palestinian protests in the West, where you see only Palestinian flags, only. While if there are counter protests like of Jewish communities, etc., you will always see the national flag, whether it is the American flag or the Union Jack in the UK, or the German flag or the Swedish flag, because Jews always identify and endeavor to be part of the nation they live among. And while the Palestinian, pro-Palestinian, let's call it movement, is geared toward the Muslim rule, even if LGBT groups think they are demonstrating for the poor Palestinians. So I would be surprised if, by the way, Israel in the 3 times it won, it was the political climate was always favorable to Israel. In the late 70s, it was around the negotiations for the peace accord with Egypt, and I would say that the votes are hugely influenced by the political climate for or against Israel.
I'm shocked that you should say such a thing, Erez. Shocked.
We are talking about art, aren't we?
High art.
Well,
The art of bashing the Jews.
It's an art.
Well, it's a hobby elevated to the level of an art. Otherwise, you can't explain. You can't explain those things, and that brings me back to the subject of this evening. I think that the leftist, more progressive, I don't want to say elite, but population in Israel is kind of shying away from the Jewish religion, from Zionism, from the nationality of Israeli Jews, because they feel that these values contradict the progressive values of equality, for example. Because if you have special regard, whatever regard to Jews, then you're somehow committing a sin to democracy and equality, which may to an extent be right, but this is why they feel they need to suppress every aspect of national pride, of national achievements, of unity around holidays and religious practices, be they executed by religious or non-religious people. They feel they need to suppress it. It's for some reason they find those threatening, and that's unfortunate. And I hope the tide will be changing.
I believe it is, Erez. I believe if through force of events and the traumatic, sometimes it takes a traumatic event to snap people out of certain modes, and I think we had a pretty traumatic event on the 7th of October of 2023. A lot of us saw it coming, I must admit. I wasn't totally surprised by such an event. I'm sure you weren't either. I think
not really. I mean
deep down we
the
understood
scale and the date, but not the Palestinian aspirations.
Yeah. The chickens came home to roost on the 7th of October. All the incapacity of the state of Israel and the institutions to deal with this reality, the refusal really to look reality in the face.
Right.
We're paying the price for that now. Yeah.
That's another symptom. If everybody is equal and we are so progressive, then the Arabs and Palestinians and even Hamas are actually, they are reasonable and progressive. We only have to find the way to, get it out from them, which is a naivete to an extent that I can't begin to describe.
Yes.
If you feel that you hold the moral ground because you are democratic, because you support the rule of law and equality, and so you feel that this is the way it should be, that you're enlightened, and that other people like terrorists and people who kill babies in ovens will one day come to their senses. You will appease them, and they'll come to their senses. They desperately want to believe that, and I understand that. I understand it. We want to be hopeful. We want to think that one day there will be peace. The important point is to understand when it's realistic and when it isn't. So I'd say that in the 4 podcasts I've been honored to have been invited by you, we have given a very wide perspective of the. We started with the Palestinism, which is the aspiration of not very well defined Palestinian people to its own land, to its own nation, to its own state, We talked about Islam aspiring to conquer and dominate the world, and we came to the rule of or actually to the judicial coup d'etat, as they refer,
yes,
which are many times symptoms of the inability to look facts in the eye, to understand that people, all of us are people, but they are different people with different aspirations, with different way of thought, and that we should be equal, but we're certainly not identical.
Yeah, and that cannot be discussed because at the moment, as we know, free speech is at stake, which is another topic myself and Marco want to bring to discussion maybe next week, Marco. And I think it would be great to have you, Erez, for that one. And if you cannot exercise free speech, then we cannot think, we cannot use words properly. So if there is no room or space for discussion or for proper conversation, those things will never be clear. And if they are not, everybody's going to be confused, and we don't know who we are, let alone what others are. So that's
absolutely
the current state of things. Yeah,
absolutely.
So I think we can wrap up, guys. And if you want to add anything, you can wrap up
on that happy note.
Happy note, oh,
Yeah.
those are big.
I do want to make one comment, and that is that even the most vicious agitators on either side are well-meaning people. They care about what they see as the state of Israel. The problem is that we don't have a common vision to what state that should be, whether it should be the state of all its inhabitants, all its residents, or one that has some connection to the past, to the Jewish past of the land, and to the Jewish people.
But that in itself is a rupture with a Zionist consensus that existed, because from Ben Gurion to Begin to Jabotinsky, with all their differences, there was this common notion of a Jewish state in the land. It wasn't a state of other nations, as it were. It was the nation state of the Jewish people, and that was the thing that held everything together and holds everything together, ultimately speaking. But that's, I suppose, it's a conversation for another time.
Right.
Okay, so the happy note, Marco, I was just thinking that I'm back and we can do this on a weekly basis again.
Of course.
This is the positive news that we can share with the audience. Hopefully we can reinstate our Wednesday schedule. From this Wednesday. We can have Erez with us more often.
Erez. Otherwise, Erez, not otherwise. You said Erez, which has another meaning. And tell him what it means, Erez. Not
well, it pronounced in a certain way, it could mean destruction, but I see myself as a very constructive person. Actually, my name means cedar tree.
Cedar is you.
Yeah, just blame it on my time I spent in Africa. I'm still recovering my my pronunciation.
No,
so we're gonna have Erez back to comment the Eurovision. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, we can have him as our special Eurovision commentator. Yeah. Alternative Eurovision.
Well, I pass.
Yeah, so
I don't think children are ready for my performance.
It's not. I see. It's not.
We put some sign at the top of the screen that it's not suitable for children.
Yeah, of a certain age.
Proceed with caution.
Yeah.
So we'll start again, guys. Every Wednesday, as we were doing, we might interrupt, or maybe it was special when I'll be in Israel. We'll think of
Yeah, we
best
have
way
to. Yes, you're
celebrate that.
coming soon for that. For in June, he's doing his book presentation. So if anybody's viewing, Vitor is presenting his book in the land of Israel.
Yeah, in June. So you're all invited, guys, to join that event. Hopefully, to be on the Bloomsday. It's not 100% confirmed, but it's going on the right direction, which is, if I'm not mistaken, the 15 or 16. I can't remember now, but mid-June, Monday.
Good.
Monday.
Looking
So,
forward.
Yeah.
Yes. We will. We'll convene. We'll convene our parliament.
Yeah. So, guys, if you enjoy this conversation, there is a button below to award us with a thumbs up. If you are aware of someone who hasn't watched us, but they might benefit from the kind of conversations we have here, to be great if you can share this podcast or any other that you feel are of usage for that particular person. And if you haven't subscribed, fine. The button is still there waiting for you guys. So, Erez, thank you again for the insights. It was such a
Thank you
complex
for having
topic,
me.
but you broke it in pieces in a way that will make sense for most people. So thanks, guys, and we'll be in touch very soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.